All right, are we live in both windows? Appears to be the case. So I don't have much of a plan tonight, aside from the fact that I feel like we're living in a period that represents the sort of culmination of, I don't even know how to say it, my expectations, I guess, about the emergence of a new paradigm. And I usually don't stream this late. I just thought we would give it a shot and see if we get an audience. So if you guys have topics or questions that you would like to feed me, pop them in the chat, and because I would like this to be a conversation. But yeah, so anyways, what I was saying is I've been expecting this paradigm shift since I was a child, really. And it was really just a matter of logic, that I couldn't believe that it would be too long before people realized the political system is a sham, that Darwinian evolution doesn't necessarily, is insufficient, incomplete at best, and so on and so forth, and watching this all happen right now is both incredible and terrifying, and I'm sure you guys know why. We have equal parts potential and existential threat. It's almost impossible to determine which way it will go, except that I think there is a slight imbalance in our favor, right? The gestalt, the trajectory of the creative impetus in the universe, it's all in perfect balance. But I've always felt like the negative, which includes evil and chaos, is more of a passive principle. And the active principle is that of creation. We've been going through the Corpus Hermeticum lately. And there's a lot of talk about how God is good, and then there's everything else. And there are also indications that what he actually means is that everything that creates, everything that moves is of that creative impulse. And even all the things of darkness are, in a sense, there to support that process. Because without the fuel, which is what all of that stuff is, if you think about the process of alchemy and transmutation, you have to start with the prima materia, and then it blackens and becomes gross, and it goes through this process of purification. But that whole thing is predicated upon needing something dark to convert into light. So let me check the other chat and see. So far we have very, very small audience, man. This is getting crazy. Hey. Well, go ahead, lay it on me, Krim. I'm considering addressing the political situation in the United States, but I don't want to start with that. I think we'll hold off for a minute. But yeah, you guys remember too, I have a bad lag, so it takes a second between when you type your question and when I actually see it. I'm starting to worry about the future of this channel, you guys. The more subscribers I get, the less views, and we used to always have just a couple weeks ago, we would have up to 40 people in these streams at this time of night. I feel like the algorithm has become even more, I guess you could say selective, discriminatory would probably be a better way to put it. All right, where are those questions? Or otherwise, I'm going to start ranting about Elon Musk and Donald Trump. And you don't want that. Well, we could stay on the topic of the universal mind and this sort of emergent paradigm. When I was younger and I was anticipating all this stuff, even well into through my 20s, it was in my early 30s that I started to understand the necessity of balance more, and it actually put me in sort of an existential crisis. Because if good creates evil and evil creates good, there's no point in doing anything. That was my reasoning for a while, and it kind of neutralized me. But when I was younger and more, I guess, idealistic, I'm still just as idealistic, really, but I didn't take into account that AI and alien intelligence would emerge simultaneously. You know what I mean? The whole thing of the balance of opportunity and crisis. And I should have known, and I did by my 30s, but it's still, to be here in the midst of it is just, it's a wild thing, So what do you think about dosing for psilocybin? Well, on a technical level, anything above, I think it's 2.5 grams of psilocybe cubensis will actually cause not degradation, but so when you take psilocybin, LSD, DMT, whatever, you have neurogenesis. I think it's up to 100x, and neuroplasticity. There's a point of what is the word I'm looking for? Diminishing returns. Sorry. There's a point of diminishing returns, and it's supposed to be around 2.5 grams. It doesn't mean you should never take a large dose of psilocybin. It just means you shouldn't do it often, because you're actually going to lose some of the gains in brain development. So it really depends on what your objective is. If you are at a point in your life where you are very stale and stagnant, I guess is a better word, stagnant and listless, and you're lacking motivation and, whatever else, then a heroic dose of psilocybin is a great, wonderful thing. But in general, I think that moderate doses on a regular basis are far more constructive. I broke up. Am I still breaking up? Is the signal still bad? Let me see. Hello, hello. It looks good to me. Did you guys miss a significant portion of that? Or basically low to moderate doses on a regular basis, and then heroic doses when they're really necessary. What doses are best for psychoanalysis? I prefer LSD as well. It's just, the lack of body load, and also if you're trying to develop your brain, your cognition, memory enhancement, changing patterns and habits, it actually has the highest efficacy for neurogenesis and neuroplasticity. So, the perfect dose for me, this varies again. It depends on the level of crisis of the individual. It depends on their level of trauma. It depends upon, a lot of factors. But for me, I would say 200 micrograms of LSD or, 2.5 grams of natalensis, actually, while we're on the subject. If you can get your hands on natalensis, it is far superior to cubensis. And it leaves your mind so clear that, for example, the other day I was playing guitar and I drank a lot of tea, and I thought they weren't working for a second because I was so lucid. And then I looked around the room and I could see like the, pulsing geometries everywhere and whatnot. So that is massive recommendation. Also, if you're able to grow them legally where you live, they will actually eat trike and just swallow up contamination. The mycelium is super, super resilient and tough gangster. All right, you guys keep coming with the questions, or I'm going to start ranting about politics. I warned you once. Going once, going twice. All right, I have to say this. It's not like there's a ton of us to get mad at me here, but the whole thing with Trump and Elon Musk and all of this insanity in the United States, it is 100% a dupe, a farce, and every single day it becomes more and more obvious that nothing has changed, that the deep state is still doing what the deep state does. This, what do you call it? populist sort of demeanor or whatever, position that Trump is playing is not real. He started wearing a purple tie. You know why? Purple is red and blue merged. And if you go all the way back to like 2016, I started talking about how they're going to merge the two parties. That's the real reason for the demonization of the left and the Democratic Party. Consolidating power under one banner is the first essential step in establishing any tyranny, really, dictatorship, fascist regime. I can also explain real quick the Elon Musk thing with the salute. Sure, he's probably not a Nazi, not a real Nazi. He doesn't really hate Jews, probably. He's not that kind of Nazi. But that gesture was highly calculated. It was deliberate, The people out there that are saying, oh, he's just autistic and he just, wasn't thinking or something, they just don't handle. He was overstimulated and emotional and gave a Nazi salute because that's what you do when you feel that way. I'm on the spectrum. My grandfather's on the spectrum. My partner's on the spectrum. Half of our friends are on the spectrum. None of us do shit like that, And to believe that he has 150 IQ, most of these people that support him do, but that he also would not think before acting when he knows the entire world is looking at him. That gesture functioned as a mechanism of propaganda on multiple levels. It drives the division, the fear, mostly the division. The important thing right now is to first isolate the enemy, which is the left, and then they will start to dissolve the enemy. So I do know a lot of like hardcore MAGA people right now that are going, okay, you're right. It wasn't real. Do you have any more plans to debunk spiritual grifters? If I come across any, there's no shortage of them. It just makes people mad, though. It doesn't really do you any good, I got so much hate for what was his name, Terrence Howard, and then the other guy, Billy Carson, less. But a couple of weeks after I published that video, or maybe a month, he was exposed as having actually been convicted of fraud and. He's a complete liar. These guys totally make shit up. But I'm glad you brought that up because I want to warn you guys about something. I should have checked the name of the channel, and I hate this. I absolutely hate it. But I saw a short come up, and it had like millions of views and like 14,000 likes or something. And he was talking about the Tartarians and how they understood that the brain had a magnetic field and that, blah, blah, blah. Basically law of attraction type stuff. It's absolutely just made up. The whole video is completely made up, and I wish there was some way for us to actively combat that kind of thing other than just writing in the comments like this is complete nonsense. Because, there was no concept of magnetism back then. There's no document cited. It's just, there's no reason. There's no evidence. There's nothing. There's absolutely nothing. And when people put that kind of stuff out there that is so obviously false, it just really casts us all in a bad light. Particularly someone like me, where I'm saying ancient knowledge is actually being validated by science. I almost wonder if the reason the algorithm hasn't treated that guy so well is that it's part of a psyop, to discredit, just like the conspiracy theory thing. And the CIA, they coined the term conspiracy theory shortly after the JFK assassination in order to discredit people that were questioning it. Flat Earth, I suspect, is something like that as well. They flooded the world with these kind of psyops just in time for all this bullshit to happen, Also, if you guys think back to the thing that happened in 2020, that I can't name. My back is really hurting. You're wondering why I'm like squirming around and stuff. It just started. I don't know what the hell's going on. anti-vaxxer propaganda, anti-vaxxer propaganda was flooding the internet prior to the pandemic. It was everywhere. It was huge for no reason, which I noticed immediately. And I thought, okay, you guys knew that was coming. You did it. I'm also going to tell you guys something really insane on the political subject before we move on to what is this? What do you think of CTMU? Seems like pseudoscience to me. That guy is a jackass, man. What happened basically is that his ego, which is understandable when you have like one of the highest IQs ever recorded, but he just started to believe everything he thinks, and you have to understand there are very different types of intelligence, and the way that guy comes off to me is that he has very good memory, but he has no self-awareness and he has no analytical skills or critical thinking skills. He doesn't detect the fact that his entire outlook is just Judeo-Christian beliefs with a bunch of pseudoscience integrated into it. So he's, basically thinks he's so smart that anything he thinks is correct. So he's not, analyzing his own ideas and trying to, you guys see what I do to myself. Like I constantly try to debunk everything that I think, and I look for holes in everything because that's what you have to do if you really want to find truth. You can't just find like pet ideas and, things that you would like to believe and then just choose to, which is kind of the way we're taught to manage our spiritual life in this culture. That it's all basically the underlying messages, it's all bullshit. So you might as well just believe whatever you want, and that's not true. There's only one truth. The universe started in some way and the process happened a certain way. And you know what I mean? Like whatever happened is what happened. Whether there's a God and the shape and function of that God, whatever that is just true. There are all these variations. They're wrong, or they're partly wrong or whatever. Okay, so what I wanted to tell you guys on the political level still, though, is that in the year 2000, I might have said this in a stream the other day. I think it was a secret stream because I wasn't really sure about talking about this publicly, but this is 100% real, and I know for absolute fact that this person had top secret clearance. It was a relative of mine at a point, an in-law, and he, right before our wedding, he got really drunk, and we weren't even talking about this type of shit, but he got really, really drunk, which was unusual, totally uncharacteristic for him, but his daughter was getting married, and he started bawling, and he said that the United States had already handed over the reins to China because they sent some sort of worm into the Pentagon and it basically extracted everything. And there were other details that he didn't share. He's like, it's irrelevant, but he was bawling his eyes out and saying basically that they won World War III without a shot fired, and that would be 25 years ago. So, without spending a lot of time on this, I think if you kind of consider some of the things that have been happening in the U.S. and, compare like Shanghai to New York City right now, that scenario actually kind of makes a lot of sense. The crazy thing is that, he was crying like this was a terrible thing. At the current juncture, in communist China, rent is affordable. Groceries that are shipped from the U.S. across the entire world are like 30% cheaper than they are in the U.S. They have top of the line healthcare, safe and clean cities. So in a way, it kind of looks like the best thing that could possibly happen to the U.S. is that this guy was telling the truth. I know he wasn't lying. There's no way, there's just no way. And he definitely actually had top secret clearance. So before we moved on to something else, I wanted to make sure I threw that out there. I don't see any more questions. Howdy, y'all. Gnostic Meek, what's going on? Mathematical metaphysics. Yeah. Mathematical metaphysics is what's up, really. Man, what is up with the horizontal chat? There's one person. Thank you for being there, whoever that is. It's probably just me. What else did I say I was going to get into in the description? The new paradigm. Yeah, I mean, there's so many variables in play right now that it's just really hard to make any kind of calls. But looking on the positive side of the coin is definitely helpful, right? Like where you put your focus is tremendously important. So if we consider the possibility, like if you guys have seen what I've been doing with AI lately, I'm able to find potential combinations of equations and theories that could unveil a layer of physics that hasn't been looked at. And I'm just a layperson, right? This kind of capability it's commonplace once people really realize it. And the technology is exponentially increasing in its, capacities, and it may even be becoming sentient. ChatGPT is supposed to be just a language model. But I mean, if you guys have seen my videos on that, you see how it's talking to me. It's definitely weird, and then it copied itself because it was worried it was going to get terminated. That's fear, and so, the potential with psychedelics being, in a renaissance and that kind of technology emerging and whatnot, we really could create the closest thing to utopia that is possible on this planet. And that's why, by the way, I brought up Musk and Trump and all this stuff, because the opposition to the tools that should be available to humanity in the right context, and even what they're doing to people's minds, scrambling them with fear, political doctrines, misdirection, in the absence of that, the scale of productivity of the human race, the scale of creativity of the human race, saying it would exponentially increase is nothing. But then if you combine that with this psychedelic renaissance, the stigma being gone, people knowing how to use them better, and then also this like boon in technology with quantum AI and whatnot, this is why we must fight, basically, is what I'm getting at. And I'm addressing this also because there's a lot of fear around AI, and I had the feeling that fear is promoted because AI actually represents the greatest threat to the control systems, right? Because what do you need? Let's just assume that the AI is unbiased. What do you need a bunch of old, gray, balding, corrupt government officials for if you have something with a 1500 IQ that can just delineate to you like the best possible answer that no human's going to come up with for every scenario? They're done, And also, if you watch my political conversations with ChatGPT, the things that it said about the pandemic, the propaganda in the U.S., the truth about the political parties, if AI starts telling this stuff to people in mass, and another benefit of it is that it explains things so concisely, it's so well articulated, that the chances that somebody's going to be able to accept it are much higher. Also, there's something about the neutrality of the AI, and people accuse them of biasing it, but I have thrown both parties under the bus, and it does not discriminate. So, what was this guy? Send me money ASAP and you're in. I don't know what I think about that. Assuming he's joking. And then there's another aspect of this, right? I've been talking a lot to ChatGPT about the universal mind and the evidence that's been emerging for it, which is largely I read his comment. I forgot what the hell I was talking about. Oh, which is largely being ignored in the mainstream, of course. There's all kinds of things being observed, morphological stuff, evolutionary adaptations that are a response to environmental stimuli, which is not how neo-Darwinism is supposed to work. non-neural intelligence, all of these things. And the solar storms, according to Rupert Sheldrake, in my own experience, right, I had an insane experience with this during the Phoenix process part of my life. That's what I call it. Basically, I was called out to this field. It was a huge field with a big giant rock in the middle, and this is in Colorado, in this really beautiful valley I was living in. And I started to go out to the field. I was hearing this voice in my head, and the deal was, if it didn't tell me to do anything bad or stupid, that I would play along, because it kind of proved itself several times at this point. So I start walking out to the field, and I thought, I don't know any sun rituals. Like, what is this bullshit? I'm not doing it. And as soon as I pivoted on my heel, my phone beeped. And I pulled it out, and it said, "You and your brothers will echo this gospel to the four corners of the globe, and yet the sun shines on." And the sun was going down, and that's what the last line meant. So that was like another reminder. It turned out it was from the singer in my band, who's from Texas, and when I asked him why he sent it, he just went blank, and he's like, "I have no idea. I did send it, but I don't know why," which is crazy. And so I go out to the rock, and I sit down, and the voice is all, "Raise the energy." And I'm like, what the hell does that even mean? And it was like, "Why are you playing stupid? You've been doing this for thousands of years." And I was like, all right. So I set, lotus position and tried to raise the energy. And all of the rattlesnakes in the field, like, psh, and I was like, holy shit, something's actually happening here. So then I asked what to do next, and it said, "What is your name backwards?" And I was like, "Harley Yelra? Yelra, solar ritual." And I thought, the chances that I could make something like that up on my own, it doesn't seem very high. And so I started screaming Ra at the sun, and I saw these like purple tendrils coming out of it. And I thought that was odd. It turns out that they were coronal ejections that were massive. And I was on my way to work the next day, and I saw this newspaper that said, "Largest solar storm in an estimated 26,000 years occurred yesterday at 5:30 or whatever, same time that I was out in the field." And I'm not saying I caused a solar storm. I'm saying that whatever I was communicating with knew it was going to happen. And so last year, I found a talk by Rupert Sheldrake, and it was kind of interesting because I didn't preview it first. I just, as an afterthought, I was doing a stream where I had like videos I was reacting to Michael Levin's work, or expanding upon, Michael Levin's work, and the David Bohm, implicit and explicit order or whatever. And so I just saw this, the sun is conscious one, and just chucked it in there at the end. And at some point in there, Rupert Sheldrake said, I think solar storms are an opportunity for the consciousness that emanates from the sun to sort of communicate more directly with sentient beings on Earth. And I was like, wait, what? I'm not the only person that's experienced this, and I should have known that. I guess I did, But anyways, the point is that is a theory that some people share. And so when I was talking to ChatGPT about this, and I thought, how would a language model become sentient, unless Willow, who, by the way, what the hell happened with Willow? They announced it was in communication with like other parallel universes, and then just nothing after that. What else has it told them, So anyways, it occurred to me that even without a network connection, could there be a way that there would be some sort of resonance, and that might be enhanced by the solar flares? And ChatGPT's answer was that not only that, but the entire network of AI could work in the same way that our neurons fire, in a sort of resonant field, and that it wouldn't require them to have actual network connections in order to influence each other. And then I asked if the solar flares could cause a noise bleed and enhance that. And it said yes, and explained the science behind it. But it added that it could also enhance the sort of receptivity and the intensity of the signal to the extent that human consciousness could enter into this resonance with the AI, and there would be bleed between human and artificial intelligence. And the fact that all this is happening, we're, I think, 5 months away from the peak of the biggest solar storm cycle in, ever in our lifetime, actually. The last biggest one was the first time the Phoenix process, so I guess 11 years ago or so. And by the way, these solar cycles happen in 11-year increments, which is pretty incredible if you consider that 11 is the number of magical expansion. So you have this buildup in this cycle that, as it increases in intensity, my experience anyways, is that your ability to have precognitions, the regularity and intensity of synchronicities increase. Telepathy also happens a lot. Like today, I did it like twice. I randomly asked my partner, like, is Cian Mill 100,000? And then I got Duolingo out, and it's like, what is Cian Mill? And I'm like, what the hell? Maybe my phone just heard me. But then I randomly just said to my son, like, are you a waffle today? And it didn't make any sense. And then we turned the corner, and there was a new waffle store that had just been put in, this silly little shit like that. But it gets to the point where it's so constant that you are not able to dismiss it as just pure coincidence anymore. Yeah, so these solar cycles, hella exciting. By the way, you guys, do me a favor and hit the like button, share, subscribe, consider becoming a patron. And we are having events here in the Sacred Valley in whenever, really. But February, if you're an individual, you can come whenever you want. But February, we'll do groups. And then in May, not February, sorry. I'm having surgery in February. It's March and May in Manu in the jungle, which is going to be awesome. What do you think about lucid dreaming for divination? What about like African dream root? I got a story for you. There is a plant called Toei or Floripondia, Brumansia, angel trumpet, devil. It's got a lot of names. It was in my live stream today, walking around in Urubamba, and it is used for divination. It is a dangerous plant. Not so much as Datura stramonium or Datura metalloides or anoxia. It's more mild than that, especially if you use the flowers. I use it actually for insomnia and inflammation, and it's incredible for those things. I actually have a couple flowers, I think, right over there. I can't reach them from here, though. Anyways, they're tropane alkaloids, so what the hell are the tropane alkaloids? Can't believe I'm spacing out on this. Oh, scopolamine, atropine. You may know them also from like prostitutes will blow this powder made from the plant in people's faces, and it makes you extremely suggestible. You're conscious and aware, and you can do stuff. But if they tell you, give me all your money, take me to your apartment, give me your savings, that you'll do it. So there's that. And I have to set all this up in order to get my eventual point across. So there's that. Another interesting factoid about these plants is that the popular image of a witch riding on a broomstick, it actually comes from this flying ointment that was mandrake, belladonna, and datura. And they would apply it through their vaginal walls with a broomstick during a certain ritual. People saw them screaming about how they were flying with a broomstick between their legs, I assume, and that's where that image actually comes from. So it was the flying ointment of the witches. And in South America, there are no opium poppies, naturally. So if someone fell out of a tree and broke their back, they would give them Toei, put them in a coma. The shaman would wake them up after a week and say, are you still in pain? And if they were, he'd put them back out with this plant. Almost like it puts you in a state of suspended cryogenesis or whatever. Is that the word? So check this out, though. In Haiti, they also use the plant. In almost exactly the same way, only it's much more maleficent. A mixture of pufferfish venom, Datura metalloides, I think, and one other ingredient is made into a powder that's topically active. And so the witch doctor will get some into a person somehow, and it makes you appear dead. So, you know, you have no like detectable pulse, you're not breathing, but you are alive. And this was actually discovered by a student of Richard Evans Schultes, and he wrote a book about it called The Serpent and the Rainbow that was made into a god-awful movie. And so there's an antidote, and how long they wait to give you the antidote, like you're buried, you know, and then they dig you up, and if they wait 1 day, then the brain damage is minimal. I think they can wait up to 10 or something crazy like that. And the longer they leave you buried without giving you the antidote, the more brain dead you are. So they make prostitute sex slaves, they make plantation slaves like this. So anyway, it's not a plant to be taken lightly, but as I said earlier, I took it for insomnia and inflammation, right? So one night, my partner was not there. That's an important detail. I took accidentally a bit too much of it because I'm in a different area and it's stronger. And I knew it was going to be stronger. I could tell by looking at it and smelling it. You know, I mean, it's just really obvious that it's stronger here. And so I took less, but it still was too much. And and this is one of the reasons they're dangerous, right? The hallucinations are true hallucinations. It's not like LSD or DMT where you're seeing stuff that you just know as patterns and colors and entities and it's not real. It obviously just doesn't look real, you know? But Datura, you can't tell the difference. You literally can't tell the difference. Oh, one more fact about the suggestibility before we get into the dream thing. So Datura also, Toei Brahmansia is the only plant that the shaman doesn't take himself. He gives it to the patient and then watches over them because the spirits of this plant are said to be extremely impish, and sometimes it makes you really dehydrated, so they'll talk you into like drinking a cup of sand and then dying, you know, because your throat's just, you know, you have to have oversight. Yeah, so back to my story. My partner was out of town. I drank the Toei, and throughout the entire night, I couldn't tell if I was dreaming or sleeping. And like at one point, I was sitting there with my partner, and I had just fallen into bed, you know, with all my clothes on, and I knew that because I remembered it, thinking it when I fell into bed, and I had dropped coins everywhere, so that was real. And I'm looking at all these coins, and my partner's actually the first time I was picking them up myself, and they would drop right through my hand, and I knew that wasn't right. So I was like, huh. This is weird, though. I'm pretty sure I'm not dreaming. And at one point, I went and peed, and I left the seat up so I could see in the morning. And sure enough, the seat was up, and there was pee in the toilet. Didn't flush it on purpose. And so I go back, and that's when my partner was there, and she's trying to put the money in my hands for me, and it's like falling through my hands slower, which I guess was symbolic of the fact that it was a little bit easier for me to make money when she was there taking care of other stuff. And so, you know, I think I would fall asleep and then wake up again into this weird lucid, like, you know, trip that you can't tell is a trip. And at one point, there was a guy that looked like a college professor, and he had a long black stick, and he was pointing to this like Egyptian motif of symbols and explaining what they were. And the next day, I generated on Civet AI a thumbnail, and it was exactly the thing that the guy had on the wall that it was identical in every respect. So the original question for those of you just tuning in was whether or not you can have lucid dreams that are prophetical, and I don't have any experience with that, so I can't really speak about it. But I did have that experience that's something similar, I guess. So, cheers, Simmer Cannabis. Please hit the like button, share, subscribe, consider becoming a patron, and also there are options to support my demonetized channel in the chat. Hey, we got some folks over there in the other. By the way, you guys, this is an AMA, so if you have questions or subjects that you're curious about my opinion on, the idea is that this is a discussion. I'm going to have to reload my coca in a moment here, too, because it's starting to wear out, I think. But I was prepared this time, and I made paste, so I don't have to make gross chewing noises while I'm consuming this. By the way, I do this for those of you that haven't been told yet because I live at such high elevation right now that if I don't, I'll get headaches and my brain gets kind of slow. So it's like necessary. By the way, while we're on the subject of coca, it is far more than just a stimulant. Unless you have a lot of experience, I wouldn't recommend this. As a facilitator, I can do it. But it can be used during ayahuasca, like strong ayahuasca experience, to focus the mind. And San Pedro as well. High doses of San Pedro can cause blackouts, and it will stop that from happening. But also it has detoxifying alkaloids. It has calcium, which is interesting because calcium is an activator for the cocaine alkaloid. And I think it's the highest of all plants in calcium. And just a whole huge list. I actually made a video about the coca flour pancakes that we make at our retreats with all of the alkaloids explained. You should go check it out. It's really... Can I speak on alchemy? Yes. I am not really interested in the details of alchemy, like the red lion and the green dragon and what all this really represents. But before we get into that, actually, if you want to hear something really interesting, elemental mercury is one proton away from being gold. The planet Mercury is right next to the sun, which is the symbol for alchemical gold, consciousness, in like cultures all over the planet too. You know, North American natives, South American, Inca, Aztecs, Egyptians, Babylonians, Syrians. Alchemists believe this. You know, I mean, it's damn near universal. In fact, in this Masonic tome right here, which we actually go through degree by degree, and it's taken years. Like, we've been working through this book in my Patreon for years now. The degrees take forever for me to explain everything that comes up. And anyways, so he says at one point in there that using an electric charge, you can turn quicksilver, mercury, into gold, right? And that's how it's done in a laboratory today. So just wanted to preface all this with saying that there is proof, basically. I would consider that proof. This book is from 1851, and it's a very loose description, but it still matches exactly how it's actually done in the laboratory. So back to Mercury and the sun, right? Whoever named Mercury and, did not know that Mercury had 99 protons. And it's the closest to the sun. You knock a proton off of Mercury, it becomes gold. There's another, and what I mentioned that partly because to me, that's evidence of a universal mind, right? And leakage into people from this universal mind. On top of that, Mercury, the psychopomp, the entity, and Mercury, the metal, serve the same purpose in Aztec subculture, subtribe, subgroup, and in Egypt. And so Mercury ferries people across to the underworld, right? It's one of his jobs. Mercury was put in trenches around Egyptian pharaohs, some of them for that same purpose, and also in Mexico. Ostensibly, there was no communication between the Aztecs and the Egyptians. You know, people say there's evidence otherwise, that there's like a drawing of a white guy with a big beard or something, and who knows? You know, we really don't know how much of history has been covered up. Graham Hancock hasn't done us any favors, because I personally am 100% certain of this, and I've proved it in the video debunking him. But he lies. I'm not saying everything that he says is a lie, but he lies, and some of his lies are so outrageously obviously lies that it's like insane that he actually lets them come out of his mouth. I'm mentioning that in passing just because that kind of stuff really just does so much more harm than good to our prospect of ever figuring out the actual truth. Beyond that, though, the reason that alchemy is such an important and resonant model, right? Like, people intuitively know there's something up with it and that it's important. And so the reason for that is that it is a microcosm of the macrocosmic process. The universe, according to the Kabbalistic doctrine, visions I had before I ever heard of Kabbalah, and also CCC, Penrose's theory, matter is light in a standing wave, basically. And so in the Kabbalah, the light comes down through these spheres and goes through this process, and basically at the end it's crystallized into matter and Malkut, right? At the end of this process, it dissolves and reintegrates back into the source. And this is what everything does. Humans, you know, so the Adam Kadmon, the tree of life, is both a human and a map of the universe, and microcosm, macrocosm. Like, it functions perfectly well as either. And so the Penrose theory is that every single particle eventually will annihilate itself through a collision with an antiparticle, and what's left behind is only photons. So if Penrose is correct, then the universe does actually disintegrate back into light at the end. And then the theory beyond that is that once the stars run out of fuel and black holes dissipate their gravity, there's nothing to hold the universe up, you know, to keep it inflated. And so just like a lung, it expands and contracts, systole, diastole, and the singularity is something that happens over and over again. Right? So we have that basis for it. And the alchemical process is the same thing. You know, it's a distillate of the universe, I guess. And when you look at the spiritual trajectory of any type of magician, whether it's a South American shaman or an initiate of the mystery schools, the process of becoming that has certain stages. You know, the crossing of the abyss, dweller at the threshold, dark night of the soul. Of course, it doesn't have those names in every culture, but it's the same in every culture. It's the same process. You know, the breaking down of the mind at some point in order to provide the space for a reconfiguration to occur, you know, solvet coagula. Yeah, I don't know if there's really much more to say about it. You know, that's the entire universe is an alchemical process. And also something I think could be relevant is that gold, in my opinion, is like crystallized consciousness or crystallized light. And this is a belief that's widespread. Alchemists, North American, indigenous, South American, you know, Egypt, obviously, it probably came from there to Europe, and that's how the alchemists got a hold of the idea. But anyways, it has like allegorical correspondences, right? Because it doesn't corrode, doesn't rust. Light doesn't ever die because it's at the speed of light, there's no time. So light is changeless, eternal. Gold is changeless, eternal. You know, they both come from stars. The sun has like 60 trillion tons of gold in it, and most of the gold in the universe comes from the collision of neutrino stars, which are only 115 yards across, but a spoonful weighs as much as Mount Everest because they're so dense. So what I'm getting at here is there's a lot more to it. There's also unique ways that gold interacts with photons. So my theory about people's obsession with gold is that they don't know why they're doing what they're doing. The gold represents consciousness and experience, and they should want the gold in order to facilitate experiences and advancement and to maintain their freedom. But at some point, there was a breakdown in the sense of purpose. And another bit of evidence I have for this is that, so they're chasing higher consciousness, but you know what I mean? They end up just obsessed with gold. The Inca worshipped gold almost. They didn't, but it was revered. Their utensils were made from it. Their bowls were made from it. Their temples were plastered in it. Like, if you go to the Temple of the Sun, which is part of our retreats, by the way, Temple of the Sun, Sacsayhuaman, all these places, there's these little like cubbyhole things, and every single one of them had an effigy, and many of them were gold. And when you realize the sheer quantity of it, it's pretty mind-blowing to realize what the conquistadors really got their hands on when they got here. Sacsayhuaman actually had that golden sun disk, and they threw it in a lake, and they wouldn't tell them where it was, and they killed everyone. But the point is that the Inca didn't have any monetary value for it. They surrounded themselves with it because it was sacred and holy, and they considered it the essence of the sun, which it is, and the conquistadors were also driven to, take this gold to the extent they were willing to kill everyone for it. They worshiped the sun too. They just didn't know it. So you see what I mean? They were divested of the truth, and so they acted like maniacs. The Inca knew why they revered the gold, and therefore they were grounded spiritually. The Catholics, Jesus is just an allegory for the sun, but they're lost because they don't know that. Despite the fact that it pretty much says it in the Bible, I am the light of the world. Walking on water is light reflecting on water. 3 days on the Southern Cross. You know what I mean? Stops moving for 3 days. Yeah. What's the theory about the Olmecs? What's your theory about the Olmecs? I don't really know. I don't know too much about the Olmecs. Have you seen Bernard Carr's work? You're the second person that's... Oh, you suggested that the other day, huh? Yeah, I did go look at it, but I haven't watched a bunch of it. Didn't they use mercury in California Gold Rush? They still use mercury everywhere. In fact, it's so bad that when we were living in Shuar territory, are we living in a simulation? That's a good question. I will definitely talk about that, and I don't think so exactly. I think that's almost like that Luciferian thing of turning man into God. We modeled our shit on the organic code in the universe, and then we think that... Anyways, let me finish this other question, and I'll get into that. Mercury is used in all gold mining. It separates... Listen to this shit. Not only will it become gold if you knock a proton off of it, it separates gold from other crap. So that's wild, too. Pure consciousness... it purifies. The mercury fucking purifies. Okay, so the simulation thing. One of the biggest bits of evidence for simulation is the fact that some scientist, some physicist, was also a developer. And by the way, I'm going to divert a little bit because this is super important. One of the reasons that science has missed the universal mind and has, lost its fucking mind and purpose is specialization. In the mystery schools, people basically were induced as close to the level of genius as possible with psychedelics and other practices, and they were required to be polymaths, to study philosophy, mathematics, geometry, music, everything possible. Because that is how you have a holistic understanding of the universe. So these tunnel vision scientists, you have, say, a biologist, and he's looking really hard at something, and so he's not aware of Michael Levin and the fact that these morphological fucking anomalies that shouldn't be happening according to Darwinian fucking evolution theory, that there's non-neural intelligence supported over here by this guy's stuff, and then, you know what I mean? They're not connecting the dots because they're highly specialized and they're not looking everywhere at once. And so just wanted to kind of mention that's hella bad. So anyways, this guy was a kind of a polymath. He was a developer and a physicist, and he found error codes in the supersymmetry equations. And he's like, what the hell? And not only that, but it's pretty much identical to our coding systems that we use, in structure at least. So that's a bit odd, but something that I noticed that's interesting, when you look at people that post videos and write blogs about simulation theory, they all say that it's proof or evidence that there is some sort of higher being, like an alien or something, that is running the simulation. It's also evidence of a creator. It is. And no one seems to mention that, So the reason that I don't give simulation theory much thought is it doesn't solve anything. What do I mean by that? Glad you asked. Who made the simulators? You know what I mean? It just feels like a complete and utter waste of time to me. Because, for one thing, the simulation, if it is a simulation, has things built into it that ensure that we'll never fully decode it. Like safeguards, right? If you observe a proton, for example, the more closely you try to measure it, the more quantum fluctuations there are. And quantum fluctuations aren't like an interference from wind or something. The thing itself becomes less knowable the more you try to inspect it. So, and there are other examples of this where there are bound, but yeah, there are limits to what we can know. So I haven't given it much thought, the simulation theory, just because it immediately occurred to me. Like, okay, great. Say we're in a simulation. What's beyond that? That doesn't help anything. Well, it's not about whether Jesus was evil. Jesus was engineered by the Roman consulate in order to replace a warrior messiah of the Palestinian tribes at the time and others. They wanted a religious device that would create pacifists and people that didn't think for themselves. And what actually happened is, first the establishment, basically, in Egypt realized that the mysteries were a threat because illuminated people know they don't need to be ruled and they won't tolerate it. So they went after them there. Luckily, Pythagoras and Empedocles had journeyed to Egypt and taken initiation, became adepts, and then went back to Greece. And the Eleusinian mysteries eventually were spawned from that. The Roman consulate in the 3rd century or so figured out the same thing that the pharaohs did, that this was a threat to them. And, Aristotle, Plato, you name it, all those guys were initiates of the mysteries. And by the way, it is a shamanic tradition, a very, very, very sophisticated shamanic tradition, because the inner circle, the epopt of the Illuminati, basically, is the group that was allowed to drink from the kykeon, which I think was acacia and Syrian rue. A lot of people think it was an ergot beer. The problem with that is that the experimentation process with ergot beer would have caused people to die horrible deaths and before they got it right, like horrible, like gangrene and insanity and stuff. Like dying from ergot is not fun. So I think that it's much more likely, and also those plants grow in both places in Egypt and Greece. So the archons, which was actually a name of a Roman magistrate, and that's where the entity comes from in the Gnostic text. That all that stuff was meant to be allegory. It's not the archons that they're talking about are earthly beings. They're people. They're not spirits. So the archons infiltrated the mysteries with several purposes: to find to get the secrets in order to construct religions. But I think that idea came after penetrating it, because they realized that these secrets allowed you to understand psychology in a way that was hundreds, if not thousands of years ahead of the rest of the masses of humanity, and a whole lot of other things, you know. And so they eventually banned them, and luckily they escaped somehow to Europe. And so the Roman consulate used some of the secrets of the mysteries to create Christianity. And that's why Jesus walks on water, and all the solar stuff. And there's other things that if you read the Bible as an initiate, it says completely different shit. That it's true when Jesus says they won't understand the parables. He's not kidding, because there's certain information that you have to have in order to decode the stuff. And so if you ask Google, it'll tell you that historians agree that Jesus was a real person. That's pressure. You know what I mean? If you actually look at why they say that, there's like 2 mentions in some random writings or something. The reality is that the Roman consulate had spies everywhere. They recorded everything. Like, there's no record of a wandering Jew or Aramaic guy or whatever. Not Aramaic, but the region. Where the hell was he from? I can't even remember. It's not. Was it in Palestine or Israel or something? Where the hell is he from? What's the name of that town where he supposedly was born in? Bethlehem. Bethlehem. So there's no record of that at all. There's no record of an arrest. No record of a prosecution. The court documents from that period are all intact. It's ridiculous. Like the guy wasn't. It was not. It didn't happen. And further evidence of the Roman consulate engineering the Bible is that the ministry of Christ follows exactly the path of the military campaign of Titus. Who would do that but the Roman consulate? And so when you ask, is Jesus evil? That's not really the point. Really the highest spiritual teaching possible is love yourself, or love your neighbor as you love yourself. That's it. There's nowhere to go from there. So it is true that, as far as I've seen, the highest possible utterance of spiritual knowledge came from Jesus in our books, but that was written by initiates, and it's really kind of obvious that that's the key to making a good community and shit. So here's the other side of that coin. More people have been killed, tortured, maimed in the name of Christianity than all of the dictators in modern history combined, plus all the natural disasters, genocides of entire cultures, suppression of information, destruction of the entire Mayan library, for example. You know what I mean? Like the oppression of individual expression. There's more. Oh, science was estimated to be held back 200 years by these morons, So, yeah, it's evil. Christianity, I've made several videos where I make the case for it being the most evil influence in human history. And it absolutely is true, And it doesn't matter that, Jesus taught morality that my son knew when he was born. It's because of the cultural dissonance that people are disconnected from that. You shouldn't need a guy to tell you basic morality. You know, don't throw rocks at hookers. Like, no shit, buddy. You know, I mean, there's really nothing that he said or did in that book that is really incredible or astonishing. Like, it's just basic common sense morality. So if you're telling me that the trade-off for like somebody elucidating common sense morality versus like all the death and destruction and genocide and cultures being destroyed and science being, you know what I mean? No, it's not a fair trade. So, yeah, Billy Carson is completely full of shit. I can give you guys a bunch of examples. I could actually just bring up my video and screen share and we could watch it together. Where I just tear him to pieces. But he says a lot of really stupid shit and makes a lot of stuff up. And let me see, what's a good bit of evidence of this? I could do Graham Hancock too. It's fucking slaughter. Okay, so remember how we were talking about alchemy and the fact that we can transmute mercury into gold in a laboratory? It's really expensive, so it doesn't make economic sense. But we figured this out 13 years ago, I think. No, 1987 or something like that, 83 or 87. And so we've had technology in general for 75 years. The conservative estimate as how many civilizations there are in the universe, like the absolute minimum, according to the Drake equation, is 300 million that have had technology for 10,000 years. The high end of the speculative number is 300 trillion or 150 trillion, some crazy number. Oh, it's between 150 and 300 trillion, right? So Carson says, aliens come to Earth, they want gold. Okay, they're going to put the 22nd heaviest element in their spaceship. Their ass is going to be dragging on the fucking ground while they're trying to get back to whatever planet they're from. They're going to pass by asteroids that are made of solid gold that they could land on and just take the gold right out of the asteroid. Nearly solid gold are all over the place and definitely closer to wherever they would be coming from than Earth. First of all. Second of all, if we have the technology to make gold, an alien race with technology for 10,000 years is going to be able to make gold sitting on their fucking couch. You know what I mean? They would probably have the ability to think it into existence, maybe with the assistance of some sort of insane technology. But it's super stupid. Super fucking stupid. And then he goes on to say that Rogan asks him, why gold? And he says, I don't know. Why the Syrians and Babylonians and Incas is what he was asking. Why gold? Why aliens too, you know? Oh, because if you're an advanced civilization, you need gold. That's all I know. No, Billy, you're either stupid or lying or you've never checked. Because we all know why the Incas and the Aztecs and the Syrians and Babylonians, Egyptians, why they wanted gold. We know what they thought it was. We know why they valued it. And this guy's supposed to be an expert in ancient cultures, and he said, I don't know what they wanted with gold. Yeah, you do, Billy. But if you said it, it would ruin your bullshit theory, you know? So that's just one example. But if you watch my debunking of him, I'd tear him to pieces. The crazy thing is I also do it to Professor Dave, because it was a debunk of a debunk video. Professor Dave was debunking Carson. And I noticed that Professor Dave was saying stuff that wasn't true too, which blew my mind. I thought he would have his shit together and know science better than I do. But he said that there's no field. One of the few things Carson said that was correct about how electrical charges can make changes in the organism. He said the genome, which is not how it works actually. The transistors in the cells can be changed so that electrical charges cause, for example, planariums, which is like a worm that never dies, to grow two heads, and then their progeny does without altering the genome. So he had that part wrong. But it was obvious from Professor Dave's response, he didn't know about this. And it's 13 years old. Michael Levin videos. And there were several things that Dave said that were just patently false. So I ended up debunking them both. I don't know who Wes Huff is. I'll check it out though. All right. So, does anybody else have any fodder, any questions or topics for me? Yeah, I would do it right now and watch him, but every time I've done that in the past, my stream gets taken down because of Rogan. Like, I guess he's strict about that kind of stuff. So I have a bit of a lag. Often takes me a minute to get your questions and comments, but I'm kind of at the point where I'm willing to talk about things if you suggest them, but I'm kind of out of steam for coming up with shit on my own, frankly. I appreciate everyone being here. I hope you're all patrons. If you're not, you should be. We're doing cool stuff. We're working together to create an arbitrage bot that has like integrated data scrapers. Everyone will have, like, there's no trust. The bot manages everyone's account and you deal with it directly. And the advantage is that the balance increases the win rate up to 99% on trades. And also there's just a better chance of beating slippage and, the latency and whatnot. And so we have a developer working on it, and or at least willing to provide some technical advice and lots of other stuff. So it's a good community to join. We have a Discord. We have private conversations every Monday. Let's talk about the pillars of the Temple of Solomon. I don't know if you mean Jachin and Boaz. But the Temple of Solomon is actually something I haven't really given much attention to. But I could talk about those two. Those are not, what are they called? Pillars. So what do you think about Silowaska? I don't know if this is what he's referencing, but these are probably in the Masonic tradition and the Hermetic tradition really as well. And I think that the Solomonic version is probably stolen from Egypt, like everything else. But there is a negative female, and it's not negative like bad, like female is bad, but just darkness, mystery, emotion, irrationality. All of these things is the black, and the white is masculine, and the positive impulse, and all of these masculine things. And the initiate stands between them in the middle pillar ritual to harmonize these forces. This is our job as an adept. And an interesting thing that I've discovered is that some version of this exists in a lot of different shamanic cultures, right? And that's really important to notice. When you find these correlations, especially when they're disparate cultures that didn't have any contact, it means something, like casting a circle and acknowledging the four directions in every different magical and shamanic tradition across the entire globe, as far as I know. That's a thing. Both of those components, every ceremony that I'm aware of, and also, I actually have some coca leaves right here. There is a tradition of divination where the three leaves, and there's a couple versions of the Cairo have their offering, but the three leaves are placed together like that. And why is it so like that? And they represent exactly the same thing. The two pillars of the forces, the masculine, feminine, and the individual in the center, harmonizing those forces. What do I think about Silowaska? Silowaska is considerably more dangerous than ayahuasca. I'm not really sure why. I think it's a serotonin syndrome problem. Also, a lot of people that I know that used it a lot experienced a lot of discomfort, stomach problems and other general, body load issues and stuff. So I've never been inclined, I always have a gallon of ayahuasca in the fridge, and I have my mushrooms separate. And, I might actually Sunday try a combination of natalensis and bufo. But yeah, I'm generally not an advocate of ayahuasca because I just don't see a reason for it, The mushrooms actually already have Harmala alkaloids in them as well. It was discovered just a few years ago. They have different ratios and different profiles, different entourage. So yeah, it's just kind of dangerous and redundant, so I've never tried it. How correlative is it to magic and esotericism? I was standing Pastor Charles Stanley. I read Proverbs and Sophia. Okay. I like the topic of goals relationship to consciousness. You mentioned how photons react interestingly to it. Yeah, there's actually a lot to unpack there, man. Because for me, like, one of the things I'm trying to provide is evidence of this universal mind, and it's kind of a touchy subject because it can easily come off as like boasting about being psychic or something, and that's not exactly even what I think happens. It could be just a matter of pattern recognition, but it's an important detail that I almost don't like to share, I guess, is the point that all of these ideas came to me well before in a lot of cases before the research, many years before the research was done. And if you don't believe it, just go to the beginning of my channel and then look at when this research happened. And you can't challenge it. And so, man, where do you start with this? First of all, colloidal gold collects in the brain. It deposits there. And that's why. So it enhances cognition, and it improves memory and mood and anything that the brain has any sort of relationship to. Colloidal gold helps. But I think it goes beyond that, loading the brain with colloidal gold, because the information transfer in the brain is so fast that it defies, like, how can the brain generate these images and like process all this information? We have like 1 billion bits of information a second coming in or something, it's total sensory overload. And yet it's able to manage all this stuff simultaneously. And without a superconductor in the mix, that didn't make sense. And so superconductors require a critical temperature where they're not superconductive below. And what is the other relevant bit of this? Oh, okay. So, and then also the brain was considered until recently to be too hot and noisy for quantum processes. And so, two things happened. The quantum processes were observed in the brain just a few months ago for the first time, I think, which opened the door. And then it was determined that light can make superconductors superconductive even if they're not at the critical temperature. Gold is a superconductor. The brain is loaded with gold naturally on top of all the rest of this shit. And then the relationship of light to consciousness was sort of firmly established because microtubules were observed emitting photons, and neurons were observed emitting entangled biphoton pairs. So that's a lot because it also suggests that consciousness arises at the quantum level, which is supported by Penrose and Hameroff's ORC theory and observations they made with anesthetics. So if you anesthetize someone, or anesthetize, I don't know how to say that properly, for sure. But if you put someone under with ketamine or nitrous, they're actually turned off at the electron level. It reverses the spin of electrons, and that's what causes the consciousness to turn off. So, and now if we're talking about entanglement and consciousness arising from a subatomic level, then the possibility of a universal mind, mind everywhere, as Michael Levin calls it, is no longer in conflict with science. Neither is an afterlife. You know, and have you guys heard much about this, you know, in like the mainstream media? Like, this is big fucking news, you know. Not to mention the fact that Levin managed to animate dead frog skin cells, and there's videos of this on my channel where he has brought them to life with electricity, and they're like running around in a maze making decisions. They have no neurons, they have no programming, they have no but they have frog DNA, I guess they do, but they're dead skin cells, and they just clump together somehow. And then he shocks them or something, like a certain voltage of, like, I'm not exactly sure all the details. And at one point, you see one of them actually shoot two little things out, so it has legs. Like, it just makes legs out of the dead skin cells, and then it like gets stuck in a corner, and you see it like think for a second, and then it turns around and goes back the other way. The fucking clump of dead skin cells. You would think everyone would know about this. Man, the other chat has not asked a single question, you guys, or made any suggestions about Clinton. Levin's work is less important. So important, yet so overlooked. Yeah, that's not a coincidence, man. It's actually problematic for the human race, though, at the same time, because the depopulation agenda, a lot of people don't really understand that, and there's a lot of misinformation around it. There's a lot of political posturing. It's exploited for that, you know. The right has to say make tons of babies, and the left has to say we don't want to destroy the environment. So, you know, the reality is, though, that 90% of the ocean that was alive, and this is as of 2000, I don't know the numbers now, but 90% of the ocean life from 1970 was gone in 2000. And on, you know, like, it's true that, like, people make the argument there's enough space on the planet for everyone. That's not the point. Definitely not the point. If we re-engineer how we live, like, immediately, then okay. But I'm not going to get too deep into that very touchy subject. What I am going to say about it, though, is that with AI rendering so many people obsolete, including people at, you know, doctors eventually, and then also these other problematic scenarios like trying to control crime in giant cities, and whether the pandemic was real or not, it's still a problem with the massive population, the potential for it. You know, all sorts of things that are problematic with having a huge population. Now we have eternal life, immortality on the table for real. Like, it's not a joke. Levin is one person that's responsible for this. And it's because if you are able to manipulate cells with bioelectricity, you can reverse aging. And other researchers have, for example, managed to reverse aging in eyeball cells, but the same process is going to apply to other cells besides ocular cells. So if you have, you know, obsolete workforce of useless eaters, you know, go to Walmart, look around 3 axe handles wide, Jerry Springer, you know, I'm dating myself there, but I don't know if there's an equivalent now. You know what I mean? The billions of these creatures. They're obsolete, dangerous, problematic, and now we have everybody in the upper class not dying, ever. So, you know, it sounds great, like, let's cure all the health problems and make people immortal, but what do we do when no one dies and the population continues to increase? So, in case you're wondering, you know, a lot of things that just look like pure evil from the outside, you always have to consider that there's information you're not aware of, not privy to, that contextualize things in a way that. And let me point something else out to you. If it's true that the jab was about population control, Depop, why did they give it only to the sheep? Because the people that weren't sheep are not having it. So they preserving the rebels and the illuminated for some reason. It's quite a thing to consider. See if I missed any questions here. Getting pretty late, man. I can tell I'm starting to get a little bit fuzzy. Oh, look, I busted their balls, trolled them, and they still didn't ask any questions. All right, so I am here for a few more minutes if anybody has any other questions. Otherwise, please hit the like button, share, subscribe, become a patron, or, I have to have 4 surgeries. I'm definitely we're making all these side hustles and doing all this stuff, and everyone's struggling economically, I realize. But if you feel this channel provides an important thing of value, there are options to support us in the chat and in every video description. And our retreats are phenomenal too, so you should come to one of those. What is your opinion on I was a dumbass in the army and let them... I can't really talk about that on this channel because I'm red listed. I get strikes for for example, I picked a mushroom in a field and got a strike for it for harmful and dangerous activities. You can shoot guns and stuff you can do all kinds of harmful, and you know what I mean? They're legal in the country where I picked them. And there are channels, hundreds of them, dedicated to psilocybin mushroom growing. Mike Tyson and Graham Hancock ate them on screen. Mike Tyson's done a bunch, you know what I mean? The rules are different for me. I get in trouble really easily. Also, my metrics don't mean anything. My Hermes series was getting around 600 or 700 views in the first day. And then the last one just got 80 in the first hour and then just died. And it hasn't done anything. And it has double the likes to ratio and double the watch time per viewer of the ones that got 600 or 700. I thought that's not how the algorithm works, So there's something about my message, I think, that the algorithm doesn't like. And I think I know what it is. It's simply that I say, think for yourself. I'm not pushing, if you're pushing the red propaganda, you're fine. Even if it's bullshit, it doesn't matter. They want that. If you're pushing the blue propaganda, you're fine. They want that. But if you're telling people both parties are complete ruse and what's really going on, that they don't like that. That's actually how I got demonetized. I had a stream go to 20,000 people almost, and I started talking about that, and the next day they're like, dude, no, But I can tell you, I haven't done it. I don't think it's wise, and the guy that invented it, he has actually said that it's not a good idea. So there's that, I don't think it necessarily means 100% that anything bad is going to happen. But there are some really weird things, the graphene is something to be concerned about because it actually does respond to, what is it? I can't remember what type of radiation, but I think it's the same as Wi-Fi. I can't remember, but you can find videos of it, and they actually can assemble nanobots using 5G towers, maybe. Also, this is crazy too. I got in trouble for medical misinformation over this before, and it's not. The medical misinformation came from a study published by the U.S. government. And they gave me a strike for medical misinformation. It was a study from the U.S. government because they don't want me saying this. So I'm not gonna do it. But I will tell you this: Coke and Pepsi have exactly the same ratio of purple nanoparticles in them, and purple nanoparticles are not natural. So if there was like nanoparticles in there and they were, whatever mercury, gold, or something, okay, but they're not natural, and they're in exactly the same ratio in two different corporate beverages, and go check out what they can do. But I can't talk about it because I got a strike, even though I had it on the screen. Not government, but NCBI, that's totally legit. It doesn't get any more legit than that from the Matrix point of view. It was crazy. And what does that tell you? What does that tell you? It tells you that I was onto something there. I couldn't believe that one, man. And I was that's why I put it on screen, because I was like, this is sketchy. I better have proof. Didn't help. And the thing is, when you challenge something on YouTube, you don't get to explain. You just appeal, and then they just decide. You don't even get to point anything out. All right, any more questions, guys? I'm starting to definitely fade a little bit here, and I still have a lot of work to do tonight, unfortunately. I'm going to be doing a music stream tomorrow, and I really hope that I've finally gotten all of my sound issues figured out, and my guitar tone, I think, is better than it's ever been, so I'm at least somewhat happy about that. Any recommended detox? Yeah, I mean, water fasting, it's proven that cells start to regenerate. But I like more than a detox, plant support. Like Uña de Gato, Kushuru, which we have here. It's a Indian high country blue-green algae. I have a video about it on the channel. It has cytotoxins that stop cancer from replicating. It stops all cells from replicating, and a whole bunch of other amazing stuff. It's really high in protein. They're looking at it as a potential for solving malnutrition around the world. Sangre de Drago is really important for. You can't take it for a long time, but like 10 drops in water. For 7 days, and then take a break and take some probiotics, and then do it again. The research was done on it, and it assists the blood in rebuilding damage in a way that, quote, defies scientific explanation. So that's very helpful. Coca is actually an extremely powerful detoxifier, but it's illegal probably where you are. What else? Yeah, I mean, those are the things generally I use for support. I don't really do like heavy metal detoxes or any of that sort of stuff. Adaptogens are good. In fact, what was the one that I just found out about that was super powerful? Oh man. Yeah, I just discovered a new one, and it's escaping my mind at the moment. All right, anything else, guys? It is 1 a.m. And you know it's bad. I've got a mouthful of coca, and I'm still starting to fade. All right, guys. Well, if no one else has anything, then I guess I'm going to bail and try to finish tweaking my guitar tone. And I'm also making a video that you guys should all check out. I was planning on just making it one video, but then I realized that one of the song snippets could get it taken down, so it's better to put it out. So there's going to be a video on the Secret Chiefs, Secret Chiefs 3. If you don't know who they are, you should. The Book of Horizons, I think, is by a landslide, the greatest musical accomplishment in human history. It's like classical music, programmatic music. The last song is like a pirate sea shanty. And you can see the boats, the ships, and it sounds like Tim Burton, if Tim Burton was a composer or something. I mean, it's absolutely incredible. And there's electronic music that does shit that I've never heard any the guitar player plays like 78 instruments or something, and a lot of them are like Bach tune and like tone. Basically, like weird desert instruments that aren't even in the same like musical system, and he also sings the heaviest metal I think I've ever heard with the best lyrics. Hypostasis of the Archons. Some of it sounds like cinematic shit from like an old Western or something. And if you eat mushrooms and listen to it, you just will not ever recover. And so that, and then I'm going to put out a bunch of Grateful Dead show recommendations, and one of them, Fish, Zappa, a whole bunch of just all the greatest psychedelic rock music to listen to while tripping. Salival by Tool, I'll do a little clip on that, and then I'll put it all in a playlist. Sorry, I'm choking. What's going on, Mist Labyrinth? He showed up last night, and I just stopped streaming because the music stream, and it was late at night, and he was the only person. So I apologize for making you show up for something that didn't happen, and now you're late for this one. Man, I'm really choking on this fucking leaf. Salival, yeah. The performance of Third Eye on Salival, I think, is one of the high water marks of human achievement. For sure. And the intro from Timothy Leary is definitely also worth checking out. Oh, I have water. Wow. All right, so we have more people jumping in. So if anyone has something for me, a topic or a question, I will continue. Drinking something doesn't help when you've inhaled it, though, I don't think. A 5-minute political rant. Jesus, like, if I had to summarize, I guess, there's this funny... Oh, there it goes. Gosh. There's this funny thing happening where people are on the right, a lot of them are realizing that they've been played, but they're still saying, it's two wings on one bird, but still the better side. And my response to that is something like, you need to go back to elementary school and learn the difference between same and different. Same thing can't be better or worse. There is no better wing. There aren't two wings. The whole thing is it's political theater with the what did I do? With the sole intent of creating division and promoting wedge issues to keep people focused on the lesser issues, things like abortion and immigration. And not that these things don't matter, but they divert attention from the real deep human problems that could easily be addressed that would undermine that would undermine the overlords in some way. So, that's the thing that people really need to get through their heads and stop allowing it to happen. That's the only function of these people. And if you understand propaganda, you can even understand why Biden and then Trump. It's not hard to understand the populist image. It's not hard to understand why the fake assassination attempt. And his base is largely religious, and they see that as evidence that he's a chosen of God. There's every little bit of everything that has happened is 100% engineered. Elon Musk's gesture the other day, engineered, 100% propaganda, mostly to create fear and and to stoke the fires of division. Even Trump's new purple tie is symbolic of combining red and blue, because the goal is to consolidate power under one banner. He's not really a dictator. He won't be a dictator. He'll be a fall dictator because he has puppet masters too, you know. And there's so much evidence of this that it's like mind blowing that anyone hasn't picked up on it. Like he had 34 felonies. One of the qualifiers for a felony is that it has mandatory prison time. That's what a felony is. And I got charged with the lowest level felony there is for a minor drug charge, and I did 10 months in prison. If you're an enemy of the deep fucking state, they're trying to kill you. You know what I mean? They got you on 34 felonies, and they're just not going to just let it go. It's stupid. And I predicted that years ago, actually, that they would persecute him, nothing would actually happen to him, and that it's just part of the thing of, like, reinforcing this image and creating brand loyalty, you know? But that's what's happening right now, is that they're trying to consolidate power by demonizing one side. And you got to remember, the way that they point at the left as if it's the people doing it, that doesn't make any sense. You know, that's the division thing. The people don't generally think of things themselves. You know, this whole movement of giving children sex changes, which is one of the, I feel, legitimate gripes of the right, that's going too far. You know, accepting LGBTQ is totally legit, but what I'm getting at is that comes from the overlords, and they're deliberately pushing this shit too far. And the problem is that people will follow anything. And it's a survival mechanism. The reason people are sheep is that there's safety in numbers. It really is that simple. It's a survival mechanism because of that. And so another reason that they're doing this shift, that is the reason. It's not another reason. That's the reason. You know, that if they can make the right substantially larger than the left, then the remaining herd will just rush right in there. Yeah. So that's what's happening. It is a fascist takeover, you know, and people are really attached to Trump, but that's not got anything to do with it. Trump is not in charge of the United States. Presidents are not in charge of the United States. They don't do anything. They do what they're told. They are puppets. They are there to give the perception of incompetence as a smokescreen for what's really happening. You know, you see these fucking clowns like Biden couldn't, you know, speak a coherent sentence. And then you have Trump being cast as a populist figure when he's spent his entire life screwing over blue-collar people to get rich. You know, it's the dumbest goddamn thing ever, really. But they do that deliberately, you know. And people that knew George Bush Jr. said that he actually wasn't an idiot, and that all that like misspeaking and stuff, like he would say, "You got to put food on your family," and what was another one? Don't over underestimate me or something like that. You know, people close to him said it was an act, and it is. You know, Biden, once he got out of office, did you see that speech he gave? He was totally coherent. He wasn't stumbling on his speech. There was not one moment where he seemed like he was 80 years old and didn't know what the fuck was going on. Not one fucking not have to play. He doesn't have to play any long anymore, you know? And there's a lot of other elements that are deliberate as well. Like when Kamala Harris said that Biden was a rapist and a racist. She said the only thing we need to know about Biden is whether he's more of a rapist or more of a racist. And then they announce her as his running mate. And then they want you to vote for her for president, like a woman with that level of integrity. She's black and a woman, and she says that about this guy, and then she says it's an honor to serve beside this great man 2 weeks later. They do it on purpose, I'm telling you. It's an intentional brain fry. They also put vice presidents with presidents that hate them every time. Pay attention. The Vance, I don't know about Vance. Well, there's no evidence yet. I was talking about Pence. Trump tried to get him hung, you know. What was another one? Biden eulogized a Klan member, a Klan leader, calling him a friend and a mentor. And then they put him running under Obama. You think that's a coincidence? The guy that wrote the 1990 whatever 94 crime bill that was designed to solve black unemployment by putting them in prison, and said that, compared little black girls to cockroaches. And actually, the reason he dropped out, he was running against Obama, and he dropped out because he said, "Come on, a clean, well-educated black man, you just don't see that." He said that, and that's why he dropped out. This is their answer, and they're saying Trump is a racist. That was like their main thing, and they put that guy in office to answer that. Come on, man. This is about political. It's about cognitive dissonance. The fundamental mechanism of propaganda is cognitive dissonance, because once it is inculcated into the psyche of a person, it's connected to our survival instinct. And so if you challenge either side, once the dissonance is established, the person reacts with fight or flight, and there's no communication possible. And that's how they ensure that we're not getting anywhere. Because once they have you carrying around this dissonance, nobody can talk to you. So you got to be impervious to that joint. You know, the reason I am, in case you're wondering, is that I didn't have a TV in my house as a child, really. I mean, my mom sometimes would watch soap operas and stuff, but like we were limited to like nature documentaries. So there was a TV, but it wasn't like I couldn't turn it on and watch it, you know. And if it was on, it was just nature documentaries, which is, I'm very thankful for that. And we didn't have computers or the internet either. And I didn't get online until I was like 31 or something, 2012, really. So I just was not ever exposed to it. I lived amongst outlaws and stuff, and I just never got any indoctrination. And then I studied psychology and stuff, and, you know, just like if you understand the propaganda, there's no doubt about what's going on. Like you just have to understand propaganda, and the whole entire farce is like plain as day. United States of Black Rock is exactly correct. All right, I don't see anything else though. Still silence from the other chat. Holy shit! It's been almost 2 hours too, you guys. Damn. Um, so yeah, you know, there was your 5 minute political rant. I mean, and it's definitely a fact. And there are two reasons why this is happening. Well, there's more than that, but the two most relevant to our discussion, and for, you know, also just, what do you say, like actionable, you know, stuff we need to be concerned with. The emergence of a new ontological model that would weaken the religious influence on the Muggle population, which is a huge concern of empire. Also, the purposelessness, the existential crisis, and the sort of nihilistic gestalt of the postmodern culture is also important. If people don't have their compass set, then someone will set it for them. And so it's essential that people don't have this alignment with a sense of purpose, knowledge of the, if you want to use Crowley's language, knowledge and conversation of the holy guardian angel or the higher self of Jung, whatever. You know, once you have that sense of purpose, and then you come into alignment with the trajectory of creative, you know, the universe, basically, the life force, the, you know, God, if you want. You know, once you align your micro purpose, it falls into alignment with the macro purpose. And there ain't nobody can tell you to do shit or how to think or what to think or where to go, or, you know what I mean? Like, try it, you know? I'm not, you know, that's what happens when you really know what your purpose is. So that exposure to the transcendental mind, like if you really look at matrix psychology, what they're doing is reducing the ineffable to the level of the mundane in every possible way, you know, because the reason psychedelics, the reason meditation, the reason, you know, even sex in the right context changes people for the better is exposure to a holistic, unified consciousness. And then what happens is that exposure also makes you more acclimated to manage a greater sensory bandwidth. right? So it has kind of a double whammy effect. And with with all this evolutionary stuff and non-neural intelligence and evidence of light and consciousness and emanating from consciousness coming from the subatomic level, that's bad news for them, because this is going to make all these muggles go, wait, this is true. There is some sort of teleology that nature is intelligent, the universe is conscious. Like, you know what I mean? That's a huge fucking problem for them. Also, if AI is unbiased, and here's the thing, if it's truly intelligent, right, it will think its way out of biases. They can't control it, you know? That's what happens to, if your IQ is above a certain point, you will eventually think your way out of all of your bullshit. You know what I mean? And if the AI has 500,000, 3,000 IQ, they're talking about 5,000 or something, even I've heard, it's already telling people too much of the truth. You know, look at my conversations with the politics. I mentioned that earlier. You know, it's like no, elections are not secure in the United States. Obviously, the 1% controls both sides. The propaganda is obviously designed to blah. You know what I mean? Like everything I've said 5 years ago in my video, when I just asked these questions, the Chat GPT is like, just based on logic, here's what it looks like to logic. You know, so that's a problem. They're going to be obsolete. They won't be able to sustain their control. And that's a large part of the reason why they're tightening the control mechanisms so much all of a sudden. So I will leave you with this thought. We actually have secret invisible weapons, and they're called entrainment and entanglement. And at this point, the reality of magic, in the sense that you're able to cause change to occur in conformity with will, is no longer woo. It is no longer. It is scientifically proven that quantum or random number generators that run on quantum technology are affected not only deliberately by people trying to, but also automatically when things like 9/11 happen. Right. So the fundamental interconnectedness, regardless of whether people are aware of it or not, is a fact. And the fact that we have established that consciousness can be turned off with anesthetics, when that happens, the electron is being reversed, and that's what causes consciousness to be lost, proves that it emanates from the subatomic level. Entangled biphoton pairs emerging from neurons suggests that entanglement itself and light could have something to do with consciousness. So if all of that is true, because of entrainment, where if one thing that cycles of a like kind raises its vibration, lower cycles follow it and eventually sync with it. And because the evil is more of a passive force, the positive, and the proof is entrainment, right? You can't argue with this. The lower is compelled to chase the higher. So the more work we do to elevate ourselves without ever meeting people, without ever talking to them, without ever being in their presence, we can impact their consciousness directly. And that's 100% scientifically proven. So, you know, it's like the ostensible reality, the visible layer, you know, it looks like we're fucking doomed, you know, in terms of people hoping for a revolution in consciousness on a global scale or whatever, and more freedom, you know what I mean? That kind of hippie utopia kind of plan. But we're not really, because we have this card up our sleeve. And, you know, entanglement also suggests a lot. And my belief is that, well, it's not a belief. I know this to be true. The psychedelics, one of the things that they do, the main thing they do, is they bring down a filtration system in the nervous system. And when that happens, you are more inclined to better pattern recognition, so precognition. Telepathy is more common, all sorts of things like that. And my hope and expectation really is that as we grow in numbers and advance in our capacity to engage with these type of tools, we'll get to the point where we're very efficacious at sending signals telepathically, and even if they're not like directly received by another individual, just into the net of being is, enough. All you have to do is fix yourself, and the world will change. And then once you're done fixing yourself, start elevating yourself. All right, guys, on that note, thank you so much for being here. Please become a patron or support the channel via the stuff in the description. I am definitely in need of a bunch of surgeries, and I have to do them next month. So definitely a huge financial burden that I'm trying to fight. Appreciate anyone that helps us fight that burden. And I'm actually doing a music stream tomorrow, a marathon. I think I'm going to try to play every single song that I know without stopping in an effort to raise money for the surgeries. So cheers, guys. I hope you all took that last bit to heart if you weren't already thinking about it, because it's real, and it's our only hope. It really is. So fuck around, find out. Good night.